Can you imagine coming home after a 12-hour hospital shift on Christmas Eve, only to find your place at the dinner table missing? Not by accident, but by design. That's what happened to me. And the worst part? My own brother handed me the insult with a smirk. Keep listening, because this isn't just a holiday snub. This is the moment I realized my family had quietly erased me, and how I made sure they'd feel it, one cold decision at a time. I'm Sarah. I'm 32. And if you'd told me 5 years ago that one day I'd be sitting in my own car on Christmas Eve, fighting back tears in the driveway of my childhood home, I wouldn't have believed you. But here we are. The day started like every other workday in my life as an ER nurse. Controlled chaos. People bleeding, crying, panicking, while I stitched, reassured, and stayed calm like always. The adrenaline helps you forget things like hunger, or loneliness, or that, technically, you're supposed to be on vacation. My shift ended at 7:12 p.m. I remember that exact time because I checked the clock as I rushed out, still wearing half a smile from a patient's thank you. I'd spent the week making sure other people got to spend the holidays with their families. That night was supposed to be mine. Snow had just started to fall as I drove back to my parents' house in suburban New Jersey. The neighborhood looked like something off a Hallmark card. Every roof frosted white, warm lights glowing in the windows. When I parked, I saw Kevin's SUV already in the driveway, blocking my usual spot. Of course, I gathered the small silver-wrapped gift I'd brought. Simple, thoughtful. A luxury coffee grinder my mom once admired, and a set of rare tea leaves I knew Dad liked. My palms were still tingling from the rush of work, but my heart? That was excited, hopeful. I was finally home. The front door was unlocked, and I could already hear laughter. Inside, the smell of cinnamon and roast beef hit me like a memory. That familiar orchestral Christmas playlist Mom always played was wafting through the house. I felt the heat on my cheeks as I kicked off my shoes and walked into the dining room, and that's when everything changed. The table was set, just like always. Mom's white linen cloth, her polished silverware, those tiny gold pinecone place cards. But there were only 5 chairs. Mom, Dad, Kevin, his wife Ellie, and their daughter. No 6th chair, no card with my name, no plate, just Kevin, standing by the head of the table with a glass of wine, grinning like a sitcom villain. "Oh good," he said, raising his glass. "You made it, just in time to, well, grab something to go." Everyone laughed, not nervously, comfortably, like this wasn't surprising at all. I blinked. "Where's my seat?" Kevin took a sip and shrugged. "Didn't think you'd get off work in time. You know how hospitals are." Then, with a half smile, "But hey, plenty of leftovers. You can eat in the car." He said it so easily, so cruelly, and no one corrected him, not even my mother, who just smoothed the folds of her napkin. I looked around the table, still hoping someone would stand up, make room, acknowledge the mistake, but no one did. So I just stood there, gift still in my hands, heart pounding, ears ringing. I didn't shout, I didn't cry, I didn't even drop the gift. Instead, I looked Kevin straight in the eye and said, calmly, "Check under your plate." He stared at me, puzzled, but I didn't wait for a response. I turned, walked to the front door, and stepped out into the falling snow. The cold slapped my face as I pulled the car door shut. The tears started the moment I gripped the steering wheel. They didn't fall. They froze against my cheeks. I didn't even start the engine right away. It wasn't about a missing chair. It was about being deliberately erased. And as I sat in that silence, I realized something else. They didn't know who they were dealing with. But they would. I drove without thinking, through dark streets dusted in snow, past twinkling porches and bundled-up children laughing in the distance. The longer I stayed behind the wheel, the clearer one truth became. I wasn't sad. I was done. I didn't go home immediately. Instead, I parked in the near-empty lot of an old bakery that had closed for the holiday. I just sat there, watching my breath fog up the windshield. The silence was thicker than the snow now falling in sheets. My fingers were still clenched around the wrapped gift. I placed it gently on the passenger seat, like it might break. There was a time when I would have turned back, smiled through the insult, Pretended it was a misunderstanding, but not tonight. Because Kevin didn't make a joke. He meant every word. And my parents? They let it slide like it wasn't even cruel. So I made sure he'd remember this Christmas. They had no idea I'd come prepared. That notarized envelope had been sealed for 3 weeks, waiting for the moment I could no longer pretend this family still saw me. Inside was everything. The legal document I'd signed renouncing my share of the family trust, and the quiet bombshell none of them saw coming. They never knew I was the reason the mortgage got paid these past 2 years. Not officially. Because I let Dad put everything in his name. That way, it kept things simple. Kevin had a baby on the way, Ellie wasn't working, and Mom swore, "It's just temporary, sweetheart. We'll balance it all out when things settle." But things never settled. They just shifted to me. I picked up extra shifts, took fewer vacations, gave more, and still, no seat. My hand trembled a little as I remembered Kevin's stupid smirk. "You can eat in the car," like I was a delivery driver, not their daughter, not his sister, not someone who gave up birthdays and holidays to help people breathe again. He thought he was being clever, but under his plate was truth. Quiet, legal, final. I had told the lawyer I didn't want confrontation. I didn't want some dramatic family war. I just wanted it in writing. I wasn't part of the trust anymore, not part of the future plans, and I had receipts, literal ones, of the thousands I'd funneled into that house, masked as gifts and help. I didn't want recognition. I wanted closure. It was Maya, my best friend, who helped me see that. She sat across from me in our favorite coffee shop just 2 weeks earlier and said, "Sarah, being quiet doesn't mean being invisible, but they're treating you like you don't even exist." I'd smiled at the time, but inside, I'd cracked. Tonight, I let that crack open all the way. After the snow calmed and the windshield began to frost, I started the car again, drove back toward my small 1-bedroom apartment, my real home, the one I pay for, clean, returned to without fanfare, where nobody waits up, and nobody plays power games with place settings. Before going inside, I stood in the parking lot for a moment and just stared up at the cloudy sky. It was Christmas Eve, and I was alone. But for the first time in years, I felt powerful. Because that envelope under Kevin's plate, it wasn't revenge. It was clarity. The kind that comes when you stop asking for a chair and start building your own table. Christmas morning used to mean cinnamon rolls, old jazz records on Dad's stereo, and Mom wearing her apron backwards by accident. I used to wake up to the sound of laughter from the kitchen and the smell of orange peel simmering on the stove. But this year, I woke up to fists pounding on my door. It wasn't the mailman, it wasn't carolers, it was Dad. He didn't call first, didn't text, just showed up at my apartment like he still had the right. "Sarah," his voice thundered through the door. "We need to talk, now." I opened it slowly, already dressed, hair brushed, coffee brewing behind me. I'd been up since 5. I'd been expecting this. He stood in the hallway in a tan coat that looked expensive, breathing hard like he'd run the whole way. His scarf was crooked, his eyes were wild. "What is this game?" he demanded, waving the opened envelope I had left beneath Kevin's plate. I didn't move, I just stepped aside, letting him in. "I don't play games," I said quietly. Dad marched into my living room, shaking snow off his boots without wiping them first. Typical. "You dropped a bombshell on the family on Christmas Eve, Sarah. What kind of person does that?" I closed the door gently behind him. "The kind of person who's tired of being erased," he scoffed. "So you're punishing us?" "I'm freeing us." He paced like he always did when he was cornered, hands running through his graying hair. "You've renounced your share of the trust. You've exposed, what, bank statements? Loan payments? You're making us look like criminals." "You did that all on your own," I said, calm, measured, no raised voice. I just showed the math. He turned, pointing a finger at me like I was 5 again. "Your mother is in tears. Kevin's wife is threatening to sue you. Do you have any idea what you've done?" "Yes," I replied. "For once in my life, I do. Because all those small favors, The bank transfers, the house payments I made under the table just to keep Mom from having another episode, they were all documented. I kept every receipt, every email where Dad promised, "We'll settle this soon," every check I sent to the mortgage company, never reimbursed, never acknowledged. I hadn't planned to use them. Not until last night. Not until Kevin looked me in the eye and told me to eat in the car. Dad sank onto my couch, like his legs had finally caught up to his pride. "You know your brother has a family," he muttered. "I know," I said, sitting across from him. "That's why I helped." He looked at me then, like he was seeing me for the first time in years. "Why would you do this? Why now?" I leaned forward, clasping my hands together. "Because the truth is, I've been helping you all survive a life you never made space for me in. And last night, you showed me that no matter how much I give, I'll always be optional." He flinched. Good. I didn't want to hurt him, but I needed him to see. "This isn't about money," I added. "It's about dignity." He looked away. Outside, snow was falling again, a slow, heavy hush against the windows. "I won't apologize," I said finally, "not for reclaiming what I gave freely, without thanks, for years. Not for asking to be treated as more than a wallet with a medical license." Dad said nothing, just stared at the framed photo on my shelf, me in my scrubs, smiling beside a patient I'd once saved. "I never knew," he said, his voice thin. "You never asked." A long silence passed between us. I could feel him grasping for something. Regret, logic, leverage. But he had nothing left to lean on but habit. Finally, he stood. "I don't agree with how you handled it," he said. "I know," I replied. "That's why it worked." He hesitated at the door. For a second, he looked like he might say something meaningful. But all he managed was, "This isn't over." "No," I said quietly. "It's just beginning." He left without another word, and I stood in the silence, not crying. Not anymore. I didn't expect quiet to be so loud. The day after Christmas is usually a haze of leftovers, movies, and half-hearted cleanup. But for me, it was the sound of my phone vibrating off the counter every 10 minutes, the snow-muffled city outside my window, and the dull throb of adrenaline that hadn't let up since last night. By 10 a.m., my voicemail inbox was full. Kevin had finally found the letter. Ellie must have read it first. She was the one whose voice screeched through the speaker. "Did you know what she did?" Ellie's voice crackled with rage. "She cut us out! Kevin, your own sister left a legal landmine under your dinner plate." Then Kevin's voice, flat and stunned. "What does she mean she was paying the mortgage? Since when?" "Since 2.5 years ago, actually. Since the pandemic cost Kevin his job and Ellie decided she was above working retail. Since Mom cried on the phone and Dad said, 'It's just a small gap, sweetheart. You've always been so stable.' I didn't answer the calls. I didn't return the texts. I just waited." At 11:30, the knock came, louder than Dad's. This time, it was Kevin. I watched him through the peephole first. Same winter jacket, but no gloves. His hands jammed deep in the pockets. Pacing, breathing hard. He didn't come alone. Ellie stood at the edge of the stairwell, arms folded, expression stony. I opened the door just a crack. "I'm not inviting you in." Kevin's jaw tightened. "I just want to talk." "That's new," I said. "You didn't want to talk last night when you made a joke out of me in front of everyone." His nostrils flared. "You blindsided us." "Number." I corrected the record. He ran a hand through his hair, then leaned closer. "Sarah, what you did, with the trust, it affects more than just you." I stepped out onto the porch, closing the door behind me. "You mean it affects your ability to live off something you didn't earn?" His face flushed. "You don't understand," he said. "Oh, I understand, Kevin. I understand that I've been floating the house while you and Ellie posted vacation photos and called me too serious. I understand that you laughed when there wasn't a chair for me." He opened his mouth, but I didn't give him the chance. "I understand," I continued, "that you thought I wouldn't notice because I don't yell, because I don't make a scene, because I'm the one who always adjusts." Silence. Then, low and sharp, Ellie finally spoke. "My parents put down money for our part of that trust. Are you going to refund them too?" I turned to her, surprised she had the nerve to speak. Funny, I said. I didn't realize you were a shareholder in my patients. Kevin cut in. Ellie, don't. But she pressed on. This is about punishing us. Admit it. This isn't about boundaries or respect or whatever therapy phrase you're using. You're angry, and now you want to make everyone else pay. My voice was steady. Yes, I'm angry, and for the first time, I'm letting that mean something. Kevin rubbed his eyes. Look, just tell me this. Is it true? The mortgage thing? I looked him squarely in the eyes. Yes. I've been paying over $900 a month towards your home while getting Christmas cards addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Freeman like I don't even exist. I covered escrow. I helped Mom avoid foreclosure without ever putting my name on it. I reached into my coat pocket, pulled out a folded document. This is from the bank. Starting January, all notices go to the person legally responsible for the mortgage now. Kevin took the paper with trembling hands. I could see his mouth move silently as he read. It's addressed to Dad, he whispered. I nodded. Because he insisted everything stay in his name. Said it was simpler that way. Now it is. Ellie muttered something under her breath, but I didn't care enough to ask. You all thought I was a background character, I said. But guess what? Background characters see everything. And sometimes, they write their own ending. Kevin stared at me, stunned into a silence that felt too late. I turned to leave. Wait, Sarah. I stopped. You're really okay walking away from all of this? He asked. I walked away years ago, I said softly. I just didn't tell anyone, until now. I closed the door behind me. This time, it locked with a sound that felt like freedom. I thought the letter under the plate would be the spark. I didn't expect Ellie to become the wildfire. It happened 2 days after Kevin showed up at my door with the bank notice still folded in his coat pocket. I hadn't heard from them since. Not a call, not a text. And for once, I wasn't waiting by the phone. Instead, I was pulling another double at the hospital, trying to clear the noise from my mind with the kind of work that leaves no space for emotion. I was halfway through dressing a wound when my phone buzzed in my locker. 6 missed calls, all from Ellie. I didn't answer, but when I finally got home, the message was waiting. Voicemail, 37 seconds long. Sarah, it's Ellie. I don't even know what to say. Kevin just told me everything. The mortgage, the trust, the payments, your payments. I'm sorry, I truly am. But I need answers. Because if what he said is true, we're in deep, like sell the house deep. And he's acting like this is all your fault. There was a pause. A hitch in her voice I hadn't heard before. Sarah, did your parents know? Did mine? I let the message play twice. This wasn't damage control. This was a woman realizing her entire life was built on sand, and the tide was coming in. The next morning, I found out from Maya, who hears everything faster than Twitter, that Ellie had packed up their toddler and gone to stay with her sister. Temporary? She told Kevin. But the way Maya said it, it didn't sound temporary. I tried not to gloat, but something about it made me exhale for the first time in days. Not because I wanted them broken up, but because for once, someone else was asking the hard questions. And it wasn't me. I didn't get the whole story until 3 days later, when Maya forwarded me a screenshot of Ellie's social media post. A long, emotionally charged caption under a photo of her daughter playing in a half-packed living room. Sometimes, the people we trust the most are the ones who keep us in the dark. Grateful for the strength to face the truth, even when it means starting over. No names, no details. But the subtext screamed. And the comments? Filled with half-sympathetic, half-nosy responses. Kevin, of course, was silent, but his silence was an answer too. Later that night, I got a text from him. Just one line. You didn't have to blow up my life. I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed, I didn't. You did. I just stopped covering for it. And I hit send. I knew what came next. The phone calls to Mom and Dad. The blame. The fallout. The classic Freeman triangle of guilt. Kevin passing it up, Mom pushing it sideways, Dad pretending it was nobody's fault until it was mine. And right on cue, Mom's number lit up the next morning. I didn't answer. Instead, I let it go to voicemail. She sounded like she'd been crying. Sarah, sweetheart, I just got off the phone with Kevin. He says Ellie left. She's saying things about the trust, about the mortgage. I told him you would never hurt family like this, that this must be a misunderstanding. A pause, a sniffle. But if there's something I don't know, please, talk to me. How could you be so cold, baby? That last line. It hit me harder than all the rest. I pressed play again just to hear it. How could you be so cold? My jaw clenched. Because if I'm cold, it's only because I was raised in the draft. I didn't call her back. I couldn't. Instead, I whispered to the empty room. It's how you taught me to survive. The words hung in the air. True, simple, final. And maybe, just maybe, that truth was what she needed to hear most. She called again the next morning, and the next. Each voicemail sounded like it was stitched together from the same quilt of disappointment, guilt, and manufactured fragility. My mother was unraveling, but not because she saw me, only because she couldn't believe I'd stopped playing my role. I'd gone from our rock to so cold in one quiet, strategic move. And it wasn't the loss of the trust money, it was the loss of control. I finally picked up on the fourth day. I don't know why. Maybe I just wanted to hear what she sounded like when the illusions crumbled. Or maybe I still, deep down, wanted some trace of acknowledgement. That I mattered. Sarah? Her voice cracked like a church bell in winter. Oh, thank God. I didn't respond. I've been trying to reach you. We need to talk. I don't understand why you're doing this to us. To you? I repeated. Yes, she said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. All this drama, the money, the papers, the accusations. We're family, Sarah. We stick together. I had to laugh, not loudly, just the kind of bitter laugh that slips out when someone rewrites your life like bad fiction. Do we? I asked. Of course we do, she said quickly. Your father and I didn't save a seat for me at the table, I interrupted. The silence was sharp. You're being dramatic. There it was. Not, you're right. Not, we're sorry. Just the same old gaslight in prettier wrapping. You raised me to be useful, I said quietly. Not loved, not seen, just convenient, until I wasn't. Sarah, she started, her voice breaking again. You called me cold, I continued. But I learned it from you, and I meant it. I remembered her telling me not to cry when my goldfish died. It's just a fish. I remembered her telling me I was too emotional when Kevin left my birthday party early 3 years ago and I said it hurt. I remembered her putting her hand on my shoulder at Grandpa's funeral and saying, now's not the time for tears. Be strong for the others. And I did. I was always strong, but never held. Never asked if I needed anything. Never comforted. Only expected. And now, here she was, asking me how I became so cold. You want to know how I did this? I said, steady. By watching you pretend your son's failures were my responsibility. By listening to you call me too serious every time I brought up boundaries. By sitting across the dinner table while you praised Kevin for remembering to bring wine and never once thanked me for paying off your second mortgage. She didn't speak. Not for a while. Then finally, softly she whispered, You're punishing me. No, I said. I'm honoring myself. Another silence. This one heavier. Then what do you want from us? She asked. And I nearly said it. I nearly shouted, I want to be chosen. But I didn't. Because if I had to ask for it, again, I'd never believe it was real. So instead I said, I want space. And then, before she could twist the meaning, before she could turn my clarity into cruelty, I ended the call. Blocked her number. I stood in the middle of my apartment, phone still warm in my hand, heart steady. This wasn't rebellion. It wasn't revenge. It was preservation. Because I wasn't raised to speak up, I was raised to endure. But when you spend your whole life making sure everyone else is warm while you freeze quietly in the background, eventually you learn to light your own fire. And mine. It was just beginning to burn. It came as a message. Not from Kevin. Not from Mom or Dad. But from someone I hadn't heard from in nearly a year. Mr. Chavez. He and his wife used to live 2 doors down from my parents. He coached Kevin's Little League team. Always brought tamales to the neighborhood potluck. and once told me I had a lion's heart in a sheep's family. I thought he was just being poetic. Turns out, he was paying attention. His message came through LinkedIn of all places. Short, respectful, but weighty. "Sarah, I heard what happened, and I want you to know I'm proud of you. Not many people have the guts to set fire to the silence. If you're open to it, I'd love to feature your story in a podcast I help produce, Invisible Daughters." Think about it. Your voice could help a lot of women find theirs. I sat frozen in my chair for a full minute, rereading the message over and over. Me? On a podcast? I didn't see myself that way. I was the background noise, the extra set of hands, the stable one, the nurse who showed up, stayed late, smiled even when patients screamed, the one who never made a scene. But here was someone saying, "Your quiet was powerful. Now let people hear your truth." I didn't respond right away. I wasn't sure I could. I stared at the words, "Invisible Daughters," and felt something crack open. Because, yes, that was me. The overlooked girl with straight A's who got one line in the family Christmas letter. The teenager who gave up college parties to work extra shifts and send cash home. The adult woman who paid for the roof over her parents' heads and got handed a folding chair in return. I clicked on the podcast link he'd sent, scrolled through the episodes, erased at the will reading. 3 kids, 1 son. Her voice was too inconvenient. Each title hit like a mirror. Each description was a version of the same ache. Women, discarded by the families they'd upheld. Sisters skipped. Daughters shamed. Truth tellers turned into scapegoats. I listened to one on my lunch break. A woman named Camille who built a business from scratch while her brothers burned through their trust fund and still got labeled the cold one for refusing to bail them out again. I must have replayed one line 5 times. When you've been invisible for so long, using your voice doesn't feel brave. It feels loud, unnatural. Like you're breaking a rule no one told you existed. But once you break it, you don't go back. I sent the message before I could lose my nerve. "Mr. Chavez, thank you. Yes, I'm ready to talk," he replied almost instantly. "Then let's help other women see what happens when the quiet one finally stops asking for a seat and starts building her own table." That night, I walked into my apartment and looked around differently. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't full of antique furniture or passed-down decor. Every plate, every chair, every light bulb was bought with my own money, on my own time. No heirlooms, no expectations. Just me. And suddenly, that felt sacred. Because maybe I didn't inherit much, but I'd earned everything. That was my legacy now. Not the trust fund, not the Freeman name, not a fake family script written by people who never learned how to love without conditions. It was me, my voice, my story. And this time, I wouldn't be speaking it behind someone else's spotlight. A week after Mr. Chavez and I recorded the interview, the mortgage company mailed the first notice. It was addressed to my father, formally, coldly, exactly how he'd insisted things stay years ago. It was probably still sitting unopened in the ceramic mail sorter by the kitchen window, the same one I bought them last Christmas. This time, I didn't drive past their house. I didn't wonder if they were talking about me. I didn't flinch at the thought of being labeled selfish or ungrateful. Instead, I was at my kitchen table, carefully sealing an envelope addressed to my mother. Inside was a check, not a generous one, not pity. Just the exact amount Ellie and Kevin had spent to reserve their 10th anniversary cruise, non-refundable, according to Maya, who'd spotted it on a mutual friend's social media post. They were planning a tropical week in February, while ignoring foreclosure notices, while blaming me. I could have ignored it. I could have let the loss sting. But I didn't. I paid it. Not because I forgave them, but because I had something better than revenge now. Proof. Proof that I didn't need their approval to be generous. That I wasn't the cold-hearted traitor they painted me to be. That I could act without rage, speak without shouting, and still change everything. I tucked a short note in with a check. No greeting, no signature, just one line, handwritten in black ink. "Now you can choose who eats outside." That was it. I dropped the envelope in the mailbox on my walk to work, snow crunching under my boots. No dramatic music. No lightning bolt of satisfaction, just peace. That afternoon, Maya texted me from the break room. Ellie's Facebook is locked down. Crew's post is gone. Kevin's not speaking to anyone. What did you do? I sent back a smiley face. Then, gave them a choice, for once. See, growing up, choices were always conditional. If you want us to be proud of you, do more. If you don't want to be left out, don't make waves. If you want peace, swallow the truth. Now the conditions were mine. They could cash the check and admit they needed me. Or they could ignore it and explain to their friends why they're stuck in snowy New Jersey eating frozen casseroles instead of sipping cocktails on a deck with ocean views. I didn't need to know which they chose. The power wasn't in their reaction, it was in my restraint. That night, I lit a candle on my windowsill, not for them, but for me. A small, flickering flame that reminded me I didn't have to torch anything to feel free. Sometimes, healing looks like sending a check in the mail and sleeping soundly afterward. Sometimes, strength is silent. Sometimes, the loudest message comes folded in a plain envelope with no return address. And sometimes, you finally stop asking to be understood and just let them wonder. Sometimes the closure is you. Getting up first Valentine's Day showed up with hearts taped on cafe windows and chocolate displays in every pharmacy aisle. I was off shift that morning, just one rare, slow Tuesday where the world didn't need me. So when Kevin texted, I almost ignored it. Coffee? Just you and me. No drama. Please? I stared at the message like it might bite. I hadn't seen him since the day he came to my door holding the bank letter like it had caught fire. We hadn't spoken since the mortgage notice hit their mailbox. I didn't know if Ellie had cashed the check. Didn't care. But something in his tone felt different. Not the usual deflection. Not anger. Just exhaustion. So I said yes. He chose a quiet place near the old library we used to walk to as kids. A spot far enough from our neighborhood, neutral ground. No chance of running into Dad picking up takeout, or Mom pretending not to cry in the baked goods aisle. When I walked in, he was already at the table. No ring, no Ellie, no defensiveness. Just a man staring into a paper cup like it might hold answers. "Hey," I said simply, sitting across from him. He looked up. "You came. Don't sound so surprised." He gave a hollow chuckle. "I wasn't sure you would. After everything." Silence sat between us like a third chair. "I just wanted to talk," he said, face to face. No yelling, no sides. I nodded. Let him go on. I didn't realize how much we depended on you," he admitted, eyes still fixed on his hands. "I mean, I knew you helped, but I thought that's just who you were. Helpful, solid, reliable, Sarah. Reliable, that word again. Like it was a badge, not a burden." "You know what's funny?" I said quietly. "You say it like a compliment, but you never noticed what it cost me." He looked up, brows furrowed. "I didn't mean—" "I know," I said, holding up a hand. "You never meant. That's the whole problem. None of you ever meant to make me invisible. But you did it anyway." He nodded slowly, guilt carving lines into his forehead. "I'm sorry." The words were quiet, unsteady, and yet something about them rang thin, like a bell rung too late. "I talked to Ellie," he went on. "She's still furious. Not just at you, at me, at Mom and Dad. She said we all expected too much and gave too little." "That's not just a feeling," I said, sipping my coffee. "It's math." Kevin cracked a half smile. "Yeah." Ellie liked the podcast, by the way, the one you were on. I raised an eyebrow. He blushed. "She recognized your voice before I did." That stopped me for a moment. So they listened. He leaned forward, voice lower. "But I still think maybe you overreacted. Just a little." There it was. The pivot. "I mean, it was just a chair, Sarah," he added. And I felt it. That soft snap in my chest. Not anger, not hurt, just confirmation. "You think this is about a chair?" I asked, calmly setting down my cup. "I mean, no, not just the chair, but you didn't have to burn the bridge." I stood. Kevin blinked. "Wait, don't go. I'm trying here." I looked down at him, voice steady as steel. "You're trying to rewrite the ending, Kevin, but I already closed the book." He stared at me, stunned. I tucked my scarf around my neck, picked up my coat, and pushed in my chair. "I don't need you to understand me," I said. "I just need you to stop standing in the doorway when you were never inside." And then I walked out, mid-sentence, just like they did to me for years. I didn't tell anyone I was leaving. Not Maya, not work, not even Mr. Chavez, who emailed last week to ask if I'd consider doing a follow-up episode. I didn't want advice or applause. I didn't want one more round of, "Are you sure?" or "That's so brave." I just wanted distance, clean, uninterrupted space. So I packed slowly, methodically, box by box, room by room. Everything I kept had one thing in common. It came from me. No family heirlooms, no childhood quilt from Mom, no Sarah's first ornament from the tree I hadn't been invited to help decorate in years. Just self-earned, self-paid, self-placed items. A minimalist life, but fully mine. I took one last look at the apartment before locking the door behind me. The place where I cried after Christmas Eve. The place where Dad stormed in with disbelief in his pocket and guilt on his boots. The place where I started over. Seattle was waiting. A new hospital. A new position. A new skyline. I'd been offered the job weeks ago. Unexpected, honestly. A colleague who heard my name mentioned in the podcast passed my info along. Turns out, the quiet one who walked out was suddenly compelling. Funny how that works. The flight was uneventful. Rain greeted me on arrival like a promise. Soft, steady, cleansing. Not dramatic like East Coast snow, just there, unbothered. The apartment I'd found was small, clean, sunlit even in the gray. Neutral walls, bare shelves. A little echo when I stepped inside, but it didn't feel empty. It felt new. As I unpacked, I noticed the silence. The good kind. No footsteps upstairs from Trevor's heavy boots. No heated calls between Mom and Kevin on speakerphone. No front door slamming, followed by a guilty voice offering cheap wine and an unspoken apology. Just peace. I didn't bring the dining table. Instead, I bought a small round one with my own money, cherry wood with 2 curved chairs. Enough for breakfast, enough for guests, enough for me. There was no inherited china, no silverware passed down from grandparents I barely remember. Just a set of matte black dishes I ordered online and a note to myself taped inside the cabinet. You deserve beauty, even when you eat alone. That first night I sat on the floor, eating takeout pad thai from a paper box, legs crossed, back against the wall, the air still smelling faintly of paint and possibility. And it hit me. Everything here, I chose. Every corner, every plate, every patch of light on the floor. No compromises. No obligatory framed photos with people who couldn't look me in the eye. Just me. And that wasn't lonely. It was sacred. I texted Maya a photo of the sunset view from my new window. She responded in all caps. "You did it. I'm screaming." I smiled. Not the polite kind, the real one. The kind that starts behind your ribs and warms its way up. Seattle would be different. Not perfect. But mine. The job started next Monday. The team seemed respectful, the schedule humane. I'd finally have evenings off without scrambling to fill in for someone else's emergency. For once, I didn't have to play the family hero, or the background fixer, or the reliable ghost. I could just be. And that was enough. I wasn't going to listen to it. I told myself I wouldn't, but curiosity is stubborn, especially when the subject line reads, "The sister who left us, episode 9 inches, Mr. Chavez had warned me." We got a submission from someone claiming to be your brother. I screened it first. Don't worry, but I think you should hear it if you want to. So I waited. 3 weeks. I stacked it under other tabs, ignored the push notifications, pretended I didn't care what Kevin had to say after all this time. But one rainy Friday night, when the world felt especially quiet, I clicked play. His voice filled my headphones, familiar, hesitant, missing its usual bravado. I guess I never thought she'd really leave, you know? Like, I thought she'd cool off, come back. She always did. Pause. But this time, she didn't. This time, she walked away, and everything just changed. I sat still, listening. No interruptions, no judgments. Just Kevin, fumbling through the kind of honesty he was never brave enough to say to my face. When I think about it now, I realize Sarah was the glue. The kind of glue you don't notice until the picture frame falls off the wall. He laughed once. Hollow. I didn't appreciate her. I don't think any of us did. We thought she'd always be there, fixing things, paying for things, smiling even when she was probably drowning. I swallowed hard, not because I was moved, but because part of me, some smaller, softer part, wanted to believe it mattered now. He kept talking, mentioned the cruise refund, the mortgage letters piling up. The day Ellie moved out, for good this time, the silence in the house. I think we mistook her silence for stability, he said. But it was exhaustion. We wore her down, and when she had nothing left to give, we called her cold. My throat tightened. He wasn't wrong, but he was too late. I don't know if she'll ever listen to this, Kevin said at the end. But if you are, Sarah, I'm sorry, and I miss you. There it was. The line meant to undo years of imbalance with 2 words and a sigh. I closed the episode, didn't hit pause, didn't hit replay, just delete. And for the first time in this whole twisted journey, I felt something close to stillness, not triumph, not sadness, just the kind of peace that comes when you realize you no longer need the apology to validate the decision. I didn't need Kevin to understand the damage. I didn't need my parents to suddenly become people they weren't. I didn't need them to rewrite history or build me a pedestal. I just needed the silence to stay intact. And in that silence, I smiled. Because starting over doesn't mean burning everything behind you. It just means you stop dragging it with you. Now, when I wake up, I don't brace for a guilt trip in my inbox. I make coffee. I open my window. I check the sunrise against the skyline I chose. And I breathe like someone who's finally living in a life built by truth, not obligation. So here's my last question to you. Have you ever hit delete? Not to forget, but to free yourself? If this story meant something to you, share it. Someone out there is still waiting for permission to walk away from the table that keeps shrinking their chair. You don't have to wait to be chosen. You can choose yourself right now. Thanks for listening to my story. I hope, in some quiet way, it helps you write your own. If this story moved you, please like, comment, and share it with someone who might need the courage to take their first step away from a harmful family dynamic. And don't forget to subscribe for more real stories of resilience, healing, and hard-earned freedom.